You like to think you are a good person. You would never hurt someone just because you are told to. You would step in. You would say no. But in 1961, a scientist built a machine that proved otherwise. And what it revealed about you is still true today. Your brain is not built to defy authority. It is built to obey it. This single fact explains wars, workplaces, and the quiet moments when you stayed silent instead of speaking up. Why does obedience come so easily? Why does it override your own sense of right and wrong? Let's go back to Yale University, 1961. A psychologist named Stanley Milgram wanted to understand something that haunted the world after the Holocaust. Ordinary people had committed unthinkable acts. Not monsters. Fathers, neighbors, churchgoers. Milgram wondered if the same thing could happen anywhere, to anyone, including you. So he designed an experiment. A volunteer would play teacher. Another person, hidden behind a wall, would play learner. The teacher's job was simple. Read a list of word pairs. If the learner got one wrong, deliver an electric shock. Each wrong answer increased the voltage. The dial went all the way up to 450 volts, a label beside it reading, "Danger, severe shock." Here is the twist. The shocks were fake. The learner was an actor. No one was actually hurt. But the teacher did not know that. As far as the volunteer understood, every scream on the other side of that wall was real. What happened next shocked even Milgram himself. As the voltage climbed, the learner began to protest. Then shout. Then scream that his heart was hurting. Then go silent, which was somehow worse. Most teachers hesitated. Many asked to stop. But when a man in a lab coat calmly said, "The experiment requires that you continue," something remarkable happened. They continued. 65% of participants delivered the maximum shock. Not because they wanted to. Many were sweating, laughing nervously, begging the experimenter to let them stop. But they kept pressing the switch. A calm voice in a lab coat was enough to override a scream of pain. Why does authority silence your instincts so easily? Part of the answer lives in your evolutionary wiring. For most of human history, survival depended on group cohesion. A tribe that splintered into individual judgment calls did not survive predators, famine, or rival groups. Deferring to a leader, an elder, a chief, kept the group alive. Obedience was not weakness, it was strategy. Your brain inherited that strategy, and it still runs quietly in the background, even in a research lab with no lions in sight. There is a second piece to this puzzle, and it comes from a different tragedy. In 1964, a woman named Kitty Genovese was attacked in New York City. Newspapers reported that dozens of witnesses heard her cries and did nothing. The story, though later found to be exaggerated in its details, sparked two psychologists, John Darley and Bibb Latané, to ask a haunting question. Why do people freeze in a crowd? Their answer became known as the bystander effect. The more people who witness an emergency, the less likely any single person is to help. Not because people are cruel, because responsibility gets diluted, everyone assumes someone else will act. You look around, and if no one else looks alarmed, your brain quietly concludes that maybe there is nothing to be alarmed about. Darley and Latané tested this in a now-famous experiment. Participants sat in a room, sometimes alone, sometimes with strangers, while smoke began pouring in through a vent. Alone, most people reported it immediately. In a group, most people sat still, glancing at each other, waiting for someone else to move first. The smoke kept filling the room. Nobody said a word. You have done this. Maybe not with smoke. Maybe with a coworker being mistreated in a meeting. Maybe with a stranger being harassed on a train. You told yourself you were reading the situation. In reality, you were performing the same ancient calculation your ancestors made around a fire. Is this my responsibility or someone else's? There is one more layer, and it might be the most uncomfortable. In 1971, a psychologist named Philip Zimbardo turned a university basement into a mock prison. He assigned ordinary students to play either guards or prisoners. No one selected for cruelty. No one screened for aggression. Just students randomly split into two roles. Within days, the guards grew cruel. They stripped prisoners of names, replacing them with numbers. They invented humiliating punishments. They enforced arbitrary rules with visible relish. The experiment was scheduled to run 2 weeks. It was shut down after 6 days because the behavior had spiraled so far beyond what anyone anticipated. What changed these students? Not their character, their role. Give a person a uniform, a title, a position of power, and behavior shifts to match the costume, not the conscience. This is not an excuse. It is